Welcome, everybody, to Camp Meetings, episode 2 of Lent in a Tent. I'm your host, Reverend Nate Melcher of Richfield United Methodist Church. And tonight, where am I? Let's get me up there. I want a picture of me. How do I make it just be me? We're learning so much about technology, friends. It's who we are at Lent in a Tent. But let's just get things going right away with a little bit of music. We got my friend Joe here, and Joe's over there. Hi there, Joe. Joe's going to lead us in our opening song, which is This Is My Father's World. You can find those lyrics pretty easily, I'm sure. So let's give it up for Joe to sing.
All right, here we go. Good to be here, everybody. This is my Father's world. 3 verses here. This is my Father's world, and to my listening, all nature sings around me. The music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest me in the throne of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His man the wonders. This is my Father's world. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's world. He shines in all that's fair, in the rustling grass I hear him pass. He speaks to me. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the road seems all so strong, God is a ruler, yeah. This is my Father's world. Why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad. The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad.
Thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate it. Joe Meinholtz, everybody, from New City Church, and working at Interfaith Power and Light, one of my favorite organizations. And you were my intern a few years ago, and that was pretty fun, right?
Yeah, 2 thumbs up.
Good. Joe will be back at the end for another song. I'm going to mute you for now, Joe. Bye. It feels very weird stopping people like that.
Don't leave me.
So that's what we're doing. So welcome to Camp Meetings, and things are going a little cattywampus here, but my hope is that where we can record it and then get it out there and you can see it. I wish we could see it live, but that's the way it goes. And I did see a few of you comment on here that you're bummed. I'm also bummed, but you know, we're going to roll with it, and that's okay. Let's do a prayer next. So friends, I'm going to invite you to center in prayer, and we're going to use the breakthrough prayer. It's something our church has been doing for a few months now. And it's just a prayer that we pray every day. And I'm going to get it out here on my phone, and I'm going to hold it up for you. I think it'll show up. Loving God of all, renew our hearts and minds. Reveal your wildest dreams. Break through to each of us. Unite us in your vision. Equip us for your work. Transform us by your song. Create our harmony. May we embrace your future and be your loving church. Amen. A little prayer goes a long way these days, friends. But we're so glad you're here for season 1 of Lent in a Tent. And here I am in a tent, and it is nice and cozy in here. It really is. And tonight we do have a great episode, and it's going to be intense. That's tonight's Sneak Attack Pun. That's right. Sneak Attack Puns are officially not brought to you by Honeywell Quiet Set Fans. Honeywell, love puns? Big fan. If you have a favorite pun that you would like to share in the comments that could become a Sneak Attack Pun in a future episode, I hope that you'll leave that pun there. I'm going to go ahead and use a little hand sanitizer here. Lucky for me, I've not been washing my hands a whole lot, so my hands aren't all raw and bloody. Ah, 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 ah. It stings. It stings. Okay. Friends, tonight I want to talk about portmanteaus. I am the portmanteau pastor. I love a good portmanteau. That's where you take one word and combine it with another word to make a brilliant new concept. I believe I can do a screen share on this if you give me a brief moment here. Getting this up and going. We've had to restart the computer and try it again here as we were trying to get things going live the way we want it to. So here's what we'll do. Go to Zoom, go to share, go to the PowerPoint and share. And now I'm going to try and don't look yet because we don't want you to get surprised by what's going on. We do want you to get surprised rather. Okay, so here are some portmanteaus for you. So for example, breakfast and lunch. Put them together and you get brunch, okay? I love brunch and I love portmanteaus. And these days, friends, we are in a land of virtual church where we're having to do a lot of our church ministry online. So if you take virtual and church together, you get Virch. This is a season of Virch. And so I thought I would offer to you folks a few portmanteaus that will help describe the new realities of our ministries as churches. So for example, if you are in cyberspace doing discipleship, this is disciplership. Discipleship. There you go, discipleship. If you are doing online, if you are online and doing giving, you are doing online giving. You should already know this one. I hope you know this one, especially you church friends. If you are in a blog, you're going to write a blog for your choir. Now you have a clog. Everybody loves a good clog. Clogs are beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, that beautiful clog. Now that we are not worshiping in our sanctuaries, we are sans the sanctuary. So you put sans and sanctuary together and you get sanctuary. That's weird. And if you are doing your Bible study by Zoom, that's Zoobles. All right. And finally, if you have Ryan Seacrest hosting your sacred podcast, you have Ryan Sacrast. So I hope that you and your church can use some of these different puns, or not puns, but portmanteaus to help you in your ministry. So something I saw on television on Monday night was really cool, and it got me thinking this week. James Corden is the host of The Late Late Show with James Corden. And he had an episode on Monday where he started it off by talking about how that date, March 23rd, was actually the 5-year anniversary of The Late Late Show with James Corden. And they were so excited to do all of these different fun things for the show and have a big celebration. And obviously they can't do that. And it was really hard. And so what they decided to do instead was to show his first show ever, and to just bask in what was just starting out. And I really appreciated his message. It was very heartfelt, and I was moved by that intro. And you can watch it on YouTube. And it was so fun to relive that first episode. I watched that first episode. I remember watching it, and I remember turning to my wife and saying, oh, it looks like I have another reason to stay up late. And I love it. The promise and the potential, it was all there from the start. It's a great show, James and Reggie and everybody. And I also want to say thank you to James and Conan and Stephen and Trevor, Samantha, John, Seth, Jimmy, is there a third Jimmy? All of you, thank you for the laughter in a challenging time. Let's not quarantine the endorphins. Let's release them. So I'm inspired. So I thought tonight, let's go ahead and take a look back at my first episode of camp meetings and kind of relive it. No, Abba, instead, I thought, why don't we go ahead and take a look back at my first sermon as a pastor? I thought this might actually say a little something about the times we're in now. For context, my first sermon as a pastor was on the book of Jonah. And Jonah is a very short read. It's only 4 chapters, and depending on your Bible, it's maybe 4 pages, if that. And so I encourage you to read Jonah on its own. But for context, Jonah's like this. Chapter 1 is Jonah running away from God. Chapter 2, oh, by the way, that doesn't work. Chapter 2, Jonah is in the belly of the big fish. 3, Jonah is out of the fish and goes and obeys God. And then in chapter 4, Jonah debates God. And there's a very interesting ending. So this sermon is about chapter 2, when Jonah is in the belly of the fish. And it starts off with a prayer. So let me read you chapter 2 of Jonah, and then I'll give you some selections from that first sermon I ever did as a pastor. So Jonah chapter 2. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called to the Lord out of my distress, and God answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. You cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight. How shall I look again upon your holy temple? The waters closed in over me, the deep surrounded me, weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever, yet you brought me up in life from the pit. O Lord my God, as my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols forsake their true loyalty, but I with the true voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. Then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it spewed Jonah up upon the dry land. There are many challenges for this as my first sermon as a pastor. And let's pull one small illustration out of Jonah and consider it for our own lives. And the illustration from Jonah we'll look at is vomit. Boy, I wish I was live right now. It's right there in Jonah chapter 2, verse 10. Then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. Now, your translation may see the fish cast Jonah upon the dry land or spewed Jonah, but you go to that original Hebrew word, vayachay, and there's no mistaking it. It's vomit. Now, nobody likes to vomit. My guess is most everyone here has somehow experienced vomit. Vomit is embarrassing, and we're so vulnerable when we vomit. Vomit can maybe be a metaphor for transition, for change, for moving from one thing to the next. Transitions where we often find ourselves at our most vulnerable, filled with the most potential for embarrassment, and as a result, fear. In the going from point A to point C, it's in this middle period in point B where we're vulnerable. And we're no longer what we were, and we're not quite what we're going to be. What we find ourselves is in the throes of transition, and that's where we most often ask, where is God in this? God is all over the Jonah story, whether Jonah likes it or not. Jonah runs the other way, God doesn't abandon Jonah. Jonah pouts about the tree, God doesn't abandon Jonah. Jonah goes overboard, God doesn't abandon Jonah. In fact, God provides a great fish to swallow him up in chapter 1, verse 17. The Lord provided a great fish to swallow up Jonah. It's God's saving action that brings Jonah into the fish in the first place. Jonah doesn't drown because God provides a great fish. It saves him from drowning. What appears to trap is actually salvific. And Jonah's escape is no escape, but the result of God's action in his life. And in this case, God's action includes vomit. God uses vomit. God spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah upon the dry land. Vomit, are you ready for this? Vomit includes, this is my first sermon at that church too. Vomit includes heaving, lurching, unnatural movement, the exercise of muscles we're not used to exercising. It comes with tears, hurting, it leaves a bad taste in our mouths, and afterward we often feel better. So while it may not be pleasant, chances are that after the process, things are going to get better. We're no longer sick to our stomach, and if God uses vomit, what does it mean to have a God that uses something with such dual capacity? Feeling sick, feeling better. And when we're talking about vomit, what we're really talking about is transition. Transition includes heaving and lurching and unnatural movement, the exercise of muscles we're not used to exercising. It can come with tears and hurting. It can leave a bad taste in our mouths. And afterward, we often feel better. So while it may not always be pleasant, chances are that after the process, things are going to get better. And if God uses transition, what does it mean to have a God that uses something with such dual capacity? From challenge to reward. Where is God in Jonah's story? Present, loving, not abandoning, walking the next big steps with him. By now, you've perhaps thought of somewhere in your life that's in the throes of transition. Maybe in your family, maybe in work, maybe in school, maybe in your health situation, maybe in how you understand who you are. Whatever your personal example is, know that when you ask, where is God in your story? The answer is as plain as it was for Jonah. Present, active, loving, not abandoning, walking the next great steps with you. And when we cry out, where is God in this? The best of all is God is with us. Amen. I looked at that yesterday and I thought about how we're all kind of in the belly of a big fish right now. We're in the depths of Sheol, the murky, mysterious place, and we're hunkered down. And here in Minnesota, we're going to be sheltering in place. And this is a tough tool, but we hope a necessary tool to keep us safe as salvific action. And God is in this. God is with us as we're separate in our homes. God is with us as we will reemerge in the world. God is with us in the vomit. We're all vulnerable and it's messy, and hopefully when all is said and done, things will feel a lot better. Okay, that's a look back. Hopefully you didn't lose your lunch over so much vomit talk. All right, I'm going to bring in my first guest, my only guest. I'm going to unmute you here, Pastor Emily. There we go. So, friends.
Hi.
Hello. My guest tonight is a congregational organizer for Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. Friends, welcome our friend, Reverend Emily Goldthwait-Fries. Welcome, Pastor Emily.
Thank you. And you are a tough act to follow, Pastor Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank you, first of all, for reminding me about 9 months of morning sickness. Appreciate that.
Well, if we can make it through that, we can make it through most things, right?
That's right.
Well, now that we've had our vomit talk, let's talk about Beacon. So can you kind of give a nutshell, what is Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative?
Yeah, many members of Richfield United Methodist Church will be familiar with Beacon through our shelter program, Families Moving Forward, which has been providing temporary shelter to families for the last 25 years. About 20 years ago, Beacon also started developing affordable housing. And today we have a really strong presence in policy work as well to make sure that we can, on every level, live out that vision that we all share, that all people have a home.
Yeah. I've loved Beacon ever since I heard about it and the work you're doing, and it's a mix of compassion and justice, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But first, with the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, I wonder, can you give any insight into what's the latest for people who are currently experiencing homelessness? What's their situation?
Yeah. There are indeed many people who are hearing right now these mandates to shelter in place or to stay home. And those of us who work in the field of shelter and housing, when we hear those phrases, it really hits us that there are folks who don't have that option right now. And we know that in our communities there are people who are living primarily on public transit or camping at this time of year. And so what I can speak to best is the people who are part of our own shelter program, the families who are in the program right now, and families moving forward in Hennepin County or in Scott and Carver counties. Are actually staying in hotels right now because of all of the closures for safety, from
Because
the
they would be staying in
coronavirus.
churches, but now they're going to be staying in these hotels for the time being.
Right. So congregations are closed, and right now hosting looks very different. And so we know that at the day center, the program center where the families spend their days, volunteers and staff and parents are all helping each other out, keeping everything clean, and really trying to focus on resourcing the kids to stay learning while they can't be going to school.
What's it been like for the kids? Can you speak to that at all?
What that's like for the kids?
Yeah.
Well, I know that I can't imagine what that's like. And as a parent myself, and you and I were talking about this the other day, parenting is a challenge every day and under the best circumstances. And so when you're in shelter and then under these additional limitations, the stress can be very, very high, and people might be feeling like there's a long wait to find a job or certainly to find housing right now. But I have really been heartened to hear about that sense of teamwork and the ways that people are coming together to support each other, even within the program and even when they're not able to get out much. There was a family I heard about a couple of days ago that, one of their children was having kind of a rough day, and didn't really want to help with the chores, just like all of our kids don't really feel like always helping with the chores.
I've never heard of that, no.
I don't feel like helping with the chores right now. But the parent said to the child, this is kind of amazing how everyone's coming together right now to make sure that everybody's okay and safe. And he said, as soon as we find housing, I want to make sure that we come back. When we have our own home, we actually come back to volunteer and help others.
Wow.
So I think that that's the spirit that we're seeing in a lot of places, and I assure you that even on those hard days, that's the spirit in our shelter program as well.
Well, the spirit and emotions are so much a part of this. I mean, it's a very holistic thing going on. And I think one of the concerns that's out there is people experience very different situations with their income streams and new realities. It's quite possible that people are either afraid that they might become homeless, or that some people will start to experience homelessness, and it's heartbreaking. And I'm curious, what would you say, what's the latest for people who might be experiencing homelessness in the situation to come?
Yeah. Well, there are a few things that we can really lift up as a testament to the good work of Beacon faith leaders, but also the many organizations that really work together around the state on matters of housing and homelessness. Because almost every time you hear the governor or a county official making statements about new programs and emergency assistance, housing is recognized as a really integral part of any package that is going to actually make a difference right now. Along with, increased, childcare for healthcare workers and essential workers, and unemployment benefits and things like that. So one of the things that we're really advocating for right now, the governor's announced a moratorium on evictions during this period of time.
Right, that was last week, I think.
Yeah, and that's really great news. That's something that we've also been asking for. And yet, if we also aren't coming up with more programs to assist families and other households with their rent, at least in this emergency time, then people at the end of when the crisis runs out and the eviction moratorium is over, how are they going to be, faced with a debt? So these are things that we need to be solving as whole communities, and not just hoping that each individual can kind of come up with it and scrape it together on their own. We can do better than that.
If I recall correctly, during our pre-interview, that's how these shows work. That's what I'm learning by doing these shows. We were talking about compassion work and justice work, and how compassion is getting people those needs that they need right now, so like a meal or a roof over your head. But then that justice work, that's advocating for change systems, and doing the work that helps people not lead to those kind of situations, if at all possible. And one of the things I love about Beacon is that it does both of these. And if I recall, you were saying to you, by doing all the advocacy work that congregations and other people have been doing about people experiencing homelessness for so long, that's maybe part of the reason why this is at the forefront for how the government is responding. Like it's paying off, the lobbying's paying off. Right.
The groups who've been working on shelter policy and trying to improve the quality and the number of shelter beds, the services that are provided to quickly get people into housing so that they're not in shelter a long time. I mean, I think all of that work, we can really point to how important that's been when you hear an announcement that like Hennepin County has just put the funding out to relocate 130 really high-risk individuals who've been in crowded shelters, who are now going to be in their own motel rooms. So I think that over time, when we stick with it, and we all know that the affordable housing crisis was already a crisis before the coronavirus started coming around through our communities.
Right.
And we're just about to see how close so many households might be, paycheck to paycheck. I think we're going to find out what that really means.
We often say paycheck to paycheck, but the reality is going to be here in a new way for millions of people.
Very quickly. And so I think that the spirit of being able to provide for one another so that we have a strong community and that people don't fall through the cracks after, a month of their restaurant being closed, for example. I also believe, what you were saying about the Jonah story, that this time is indeed unveiling how fragile many households already are.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see the racial disparities that we've been learning so much about in Minnesota, in healthcare, housing, education. We know that there's a race equity piece of this as well. And so programs that really reach as far as possible in making sure that every child and every family, every adult has the opportunity to thrive. Those are things that we're going to be working on, that we've been working on before the coronavirus, and that we're going to keep working on long into the future. And I think we can already point to how important that organizing has been.
So put us to work then. Give us a call to action. What do you need from us? And I can't put up a link now, but I can later on. What can I do? What can we do?
Yeah. First of all, Richfield United Methodist members, you've got a hosting week coming up, and that's going to look different than what you're used to. Families aren't probably going to be coming to stay in your building, but you will be invited to get in touch with Barb Devlin and to prepare or to plan on picking up a meal prepared in a commercial kitchen and to deliver that to where the families are staying. Even though we're missing a lot of the, homey touch of the hospitality, that's kind of the hallmark of our shelter. That's going to mean a lot to the families and continue keeping that important connection with them and other community members.
And other churches and synagogues and mosques can reach out to you folks to get involved as one of the host churches down the road.
That's right. We're always looking for host congregations of any denomination or faith background, and I would love to visit with anyone about that. We also right now, people have asked about donations. Do we need toilet paper and cleaning supplies and things like that? And it may seem less personal, But what would really be needed is donations through the donate button on our website. You can even designate that for families moving forward if you'd like.
So the key donation, it is money. So I'll name it for
It's
you.
money right
It
now.
is
Yeah,
because we then are able to give our money to Beacon and trust you that you know how to put those funds to best and most practical use to get families
that's
what they
right.
need,
That's right.
including
And
new
it's,
costs involved in hosting people in hotels and motels.
yeah, and it's about $5,000 a week. So that also shares with you the value that, a typical hosting week really contributes.
Right.
In addition to that human relationship side of really providing that sacred hospitality that has become important to so many of us.
So there's a
So
dollar
that's one
cost
thing
and
you
there's
can do.
what's that?
So that's one thing you can do is to give money
Yeah.
and to watch for other volunteer opportunities coming up through your congregation.
And I believe that's at beaconinterfaith.org/donate, and we'll get a link up when we post this video. But then you
That's
have one
right.
other link I want to put up for you that was about advocacy. Can you say a little bit about that?
Right. The issue I was mentioning earlier about rental assistance is really important. We've actually had a bill advancing through the legislature this year that would create a rental assistance program statewide for anyone who qualifies. And you may be aware that people who qualify for a Section 8 voucher from the federal government, only 1 in 4 are receiving that help that are qualified in Minnesota. So we've been working on a really big long-term solution. But in the meantime, during this crisis, we know that our legislators are actually going to be deciding tomorrow on the packages of assistance related to coronavirus. So there's a really important action alert in that link that Pastor Nate's gonna post. And if you could call your senator or the other key senators to let them know how important this issue is to us, and we want to make sure people don't face a housing crisis after the health crisis, after the unemployment crises that might be coming.
Oh my gosh, that's a big old layer cake. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
Right. But
Well,
it doesn't have to be this way. And I think that that's why it's so important for people from faith communities to speak out, because we have the wisdom of traditions that are thousands of years old. That Jonah story and so many of those scriptures and stories that teach us that deep down the values that we want reflected in the communities that we live in.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time tonight, but also your advocacy and your dedication to people who are experiencing homelessness, as well as people who we don't want to ever experience homelessness.
That's
A
right.
preemptive strike of advocacy and justice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Nate, and thanks for hosting and providing meals. Richfield UMC, we love you.
Awesome. All right, friends. Reverend Emily Goldwaite Fries is a congregational organizer for Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative here in the Twin Cities Metro. You can go to beaconinterfaith.org/donate to donate. That's a well-named link. And then we'll get another link up there so that you can be contacting our legislature about new advocacy. Thank you so much. And now the awkward transition of muting you. All right. Oh, you muted yourself. Good. All right. So let's unpin that video, which will bring up me, I believe. No. It's just, I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I knew what I was doing. That's okay. I'll be here. How about this? And I'll bring up Joe, because Joe, you're going to have a song here in just a moment. Get that video going. All right, there's Joe. So just a couple brief things here before we wrap up. Thank you so much for sticking with us on a recorded episode of Camp Meetings that had some weird technical difficulties, but you know what? The Spirit's in it all. We're just going to go through it. Make sure you can leave us your suggestion for your sneak attack pun. And I heard a portion of a podcast this week called It's Been a Minute, and they had some a great episode about advice that people were giving to each other in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would check out that podcast. I forgot to say, but at the beginning, I usually I did it the first episode. This is episode 2. I usually give people the opportunity to guess how many emails are in my inbox unread. I usually have a 0 email inbox. I like to keep it nice and tidy, but in these unprecedented times, I do have some unread emails. So what's your guess? Last week it was 82. This week it is 40. I have reduced it by half. That includes many emails which poured in since last week. So we're getting there. Next time on Camp Meetings, Reverend Rich Zeck will be our guest. He's going to talk about his experience as a pastor of a church that has been unable to worship in person for Easter due to a natural disaster 3 times. So for all of us who are wondering what could it be like in the midst of shelter in place and not having in-person Easter worship, let's hear from somebody's experience about what it can be like, the things that are okay and joyful, the things that are hard, and the things that we might expect. So tune in for next time. I'm Reverend Nate Melcher, and this is from Richfield United Methodist Church Camp Meetings. In-person worship is suspended through at least May 10th. We are live streaming worship Sundays at 9:30. Your benediction is to go and serve God in faith, justice, and joy. And as our band leader, John Wesley, says, the best of all is God is with us. All right, Joe, what are you bringing us home with? Be thou my vision?
Be thou my vision. Yes, indeed.
All right, we're ready.
And I was thinking, when I was your intern and I did my first sermon, you never told me to use vomit in it. But you did hook me up through that internship with a really good connection to ministry with people experiencing homelessness at Hennepin Avenue United Methodist Church, too.
Yes, Hennepin Avenue, great church, and the Dignity Center is an amazing, amazing ministry. They're definitely worth supporting, too, yes.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about vomit sermons, but I think we did talk about splachnon, which is kind of the guts. Jesus has compassion for people, and he has a splachnon. So yeah, we've had some splattery conversations from the Bible. Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Well, that's giving people enough time to find the lyrics online for Be Thou My Vision. Let's give it to Joe.
Yeah. Let's sing.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all else to me, save that thou art. Thou my best, Lord, my day, my night. Waking or sleeping, my presence is mine.
Be thou my wisdom.
Be thou my wisdom, and thou my truth. I am with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, to Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I be one. Riches I need, golden's empty grave. Thou mine inheritance, now and always. Thou and only first in my heart. My King of heaven, my treasure. My King of heaven, my victory won. May I reach heaven's joy, oh bright and sun. The heart of my own heart, still be my vision, Lord. Heart of my own heart,